Well, let's get to it.
Okay.
All right. Welcome, Chris Velasco. Did I get that right?
Yes, thank you.
Welcome to Griner's studio. Thanks for coming downtown and taking time out of your day. I know you're very busy.
Yeah.
I'm going to start out with reading a little intro about you, and then we'll jump into it because I think we have a lot to talk about that'll be very interesting. So for 25 years, Chris has been actively engaged in the development of leading-edge communities. He has worked in over 200 cities around the world and has been a leader in the creation of over $1 billion in new mixed-use specialty facilities. In early 2013, Chris and Place founder Elizabeth Bowling filed a U.S. patent application for eGeneration, a renewable energy process that powers communities from renewable energy and waste. We'll dive more into that in a little bit, but did I get that all right?
Yes.
Any more that you want to add?
It's hard to believe it's been 25 years.
Yeah. Does it feel like it?
No. Well, in some ways, I mean, sustainability, which is an important aspect of what we do, has come a long way. When I first started saying I wanted to build green buildings, people thought I was talking about the paint color.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it has, so that seems like a long time now, but in other ways, it's gone by fast.
So in your year one, what did motivate you, especially when people were thinking sustainability, not knowing what it was? Why did you feel it was important to you?
I just didn't, I could see the writing on the wall. It just didn't seem responsible anymore to build buildings that wasted energy, wasted resources. And so as I looked into it more, I found lots of data to suggest that it doesn't even cost anymore to do buildings that are significantly more efficient, significantly less wasteful. You just have to do it.
I think people would find that hard to believe. But I mean, I guess you've done it so far, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
It's just putting the work into it.
It's putting the work into it. It's knowing what you don't know. So you have to go in, you have to jump in and find out what you don't know. And oftentimes the systems and the materials that we use are the principal ones, the ones that get used all the time. That doesn't mean they're the best. It doesn't mean they're the most efficient or the least toxic or any of those other things that we care about. So we just have to do the homework and find out. And yeah, maybe it's a smaller manufacturer that is doing things the right way, and we can give them our business. But it takes a little extra work. Mm-hmm. And it takes working with an architectural team, that's Our MSR folks are absolutely the best in this business at that, and so they're an excellent partner. And of course, Griner has been there to kind of ask the questions along the way. Well, let's make sure that doesn't cost more. Let's make sure that we know how to implement that system, how to build that system. Let's make sure we got the right people at the table. All of those things that are involved with the implementation of it. That's so important.
Yep, I couldn't agree more. I like that I did have a little shameless plug in there about what it was like working with Griner. So I think you answered that. So thank you. Well, it's just a fun project.
Well, I'll bring up Griner more because it has been hugely important to us. I mean, it's really been almost a partnership with Griner, and we're looking forward to doing more projects. And that's just because there are not a lot of there are people who know what they're doing out there, know how to build a building, but the folks who can support doing something non-standard that can just kind of jump in and be your partner on that's really rare. And then folks who have the kind of necessary integrity. For us, we have to hit the highest standards as a nonprofit because we're using other people's money. Mm-hmm. And they want to know that we're doing it the best it can possibly be done. And so Griner does that for us.
Oh, I love hearing that. Yeah, Spencer's definitely our visionary here, and then Stacy just knows how to run a project, and then of course I got to give kudos to Derek Hillstrom, to our superintendent, he's just willing to jump in and do it and go for it. So
he's got that can-do attitude that you want in a superintendent for sure. And I'm constantly saying, I'm going to, this week, in fact, I'm going to bring 50 people through the building. Yep. We'll figure that out.
There's always a way. That's awesome. Well, okay, let's jump into it then, because I think we do really want to hit on some of your new sustainable, let me start over. We do want to hit on that eGeneration power concept and how you're going to hopefully develop it into ViaSol. So tell us a little bit about your patent pending eGeneration power concept. And I also want to know more about this urban forest that's described too at Via Sol.
Yeah, well, let's start with lead generation first, and then that may use up all the time, just because there's so much to talk about.
I'll cut you off if needed.
But actually, we can build sustainable buildings. We've been doing it for a long time now. And the problem is people still waste as much as they've always wasted. Even though your building is being very efficient, the households are throwing as much away as they ever, even more than they ever threw away before. And they still have to get food. And the sad truth is that in Minnesota, we get fresh fruit and produce from California. And it's trucked halfway across the country to us. That is just not an efficient way to do things. And so we've been looking for a way to bring food and energy to community building. How can we include that? And as we started talking more about it, the team and the board realized that they're intimately connected. Food doesn't come from a grocery store. It has to be grown somewhere. And that takes water and energy, and it has a carbon footprint moving it around. Energy gets made somewhere. It doesn't come out of an outlet. And that gets sent down a wire, and that's very inefficient because about 26% of our energy is wasted getting sent to us down a wire. We can't afford to do that. So this idea of we're throwing stuff away, about 55% of that is organic material that has all of these vitamins and minerals and nutrients that need to go back into the soil, but it doesn't. It goes into a landfill or an incinerator, and all those nutrients are lost. There's a finite number of those. And so instead, we can take those food scraps, we can use natural microbes to break them down, and they convert them to energy. We use the energy to power the building, and then the leftover byproduct from the life cycle of the microbes is heat, which we can use in the building,
Definitely can
and fertilizer, which we can use to grow food. So we use food to grow food. We use energy right where it's being made. We eat food right where it's being grown, and we clean up over half of all of our waste instead of sending it somewhere.
That's amazing. So now if other sustainable, I'm curious to know about other sustainable options that you have for Via Sol, if with or without eGen. What kind of amenities, I guess, would you call
There's
them
solar
amenity?
power all over the building, and when we ran out of roof, we decided to put solar power over the parking lot.
Okay.
So there's just not, there's never enough space to generate solar power. We want to put it on every square inch of everything. So that's the name Via Sol, by way of the sun. And that's what that means. But we also have a wind turbine, which is a cool thing. It's made by the Finns, and they make these for like Arctic research centers and so forth. So they're super durable, and they can go as fast. I mean, if you have 100-mile-an-hour wind blowing across the North Pole, it's turning super fast and generating a lot of energy, as opposed to a big propeller type turbine.
Yeah, that's what I was envisioning.
Right.
Okay. So did you dream up this? Or did you see one? What inspired you to
Yeah,
have this
so I
project?
think that we were looking for something that could be deployed in a residential area. Obviously, these big utility windmills that we see out in the countryside, they can't be deployed in residential areas. So then you have this problem again. You generate it over there, you use it over there. And what we want to do is generate it here. So they don't generate nearly as much energy, but they don't have to because we're just using it ourselves. And they turn pretty much all the time because it only takes 0.2 kilometers of wind in order to make them spin. And they don't make any noise. They don't kill any animals. They don't make any vibrations. None of the things that bother people about the utility-sized ones. And wind power is great, but everything that we do has a shadow side to it, wind power included. It's much better than coal-fired energy by a mile. But I think these little helical turbines, we could be deploying them in a lot more places. And the truth is that sometimes when the sun isn't shining, the wind is blowing, and when the wind is blowing, the sun isn't often shining, so they complement each other really nicely.
Is this the first type of project that'll have this?
Yeah, and what's nice is it's visible, so people driving by, which is, let's face it, that's how we see most things is in the car these days. You can't see the solar, it's up on the roof, but you can see the wind turbine, so that's going to be exciting.
This is kind of off topic, so we can maybe edit it out, but I just remember Solar panels, there's a discussion of having them. I live out in the country, and they have those solar farms.
Yeah.
And we got a letter that they would maybe end up in a farm field in our backyard. And my husband was like, yeah. And I couldn't believe that my reaction was not in my backyard. And
it's natural, isn't it?
I know. And I was
is.
like, oh my God, Heather, you cannot be that person, And it didn't end up going in our backyard, but it is very visible. And we do have them nearby. And again, you can see them, and typically we try to hide them.
The
on
farms
top
you
of
can
roofs.
see, and
Yeah.
I think that I'm one who thinks they're beautiful.
Yeah.
And they're usually over other land that isn't usable for other things.
Yep.
And so you turn just kind of a brown field into this sort of beautiful sculpture, and they are that's the best energy form there is. There's more energy than falls in 1 minute on the earth to power us for an entire year, the entire planet.
So I have 5 acres up front. If I put some solar panels in my yard, you think that would cause a stir in my neighborhood?
Absolutely,
but maybe in a
absolutely.
good way.
One of the engineers that we've worked with over the years, Charlie Thornton, he's a wonderful structural engineer. He got excited about solar after we were talking. He put it in his yard, and he said, "Now I pay $18 in electric bills is all." So
Yeah, I might need to talk about that because our electrical bills are skyrocketing. Okay, but anyway, back to it. Okay.
Yes.
So then tell me a little bit about this urban forest too. I think and anything else you're proud of about this project that's unique. I'd love to hear.
We took almost an acre of the site. So, when you think about most developments, they are talking about we're going to use every foot of the block and build as tall a building allowed by code as we possibly can for money reasons. So one of the things, let's call it a luxury of being a nonprofit, is that, yes, our projects still have to make economic sense, but they don't have to make maximum profit. That's not what we're about. And I think that people living in urban areas miss green space, and I think it's important to their health.
Absolutely.
So we're taking almost an acre, reforesting it, because of course, when we build cities or even apartment buildings for that matter, the first thing we do is come in and mow down all the trees, and then we name them, Maple Grove or whatever it turns out to be. That's the truth. So in this particular case, we're going to reforest it, and then it turns into a little walking path so people can take a walk in the woods, even though it's a very urban site. There's a freeway, there are 2 freeways, there's a train station right outside our front door. So, this is an urban site, but take a walk in the woods. And then our creatives, our artists, are putting in sculpture so that you can kind of discover new changing sculpture as you walk through the woods.
Oh, that sounds lovely.
Yeah.
And have you done an urban forest like that on any of your other projects?
No, we usually have community gardens. We just don't oftentimes have enough space. This was the first time that we kind of had enough space to build the kind of building we wanted to build and still leave behind a significant enough space that it could really be an ecosystem. Because just a few trees, it does not a forest make. And so we need enough to have underground communication between them, enough trees to pollinate one another and become habitat and generate oxygen and use up carbon dioxide. There's so many things we get for free from trees. It's amazing.
Yes, it is amazing. So with a unique project like this, I'm going to kind of switch gears. Do people understand the benefits? And by people, I mean banking institutions. Is it hard to get this type of work financed?
Yes.
These types of projects, and why is that?
I think anything non-standard is always difficult to get financed. I think that everyone wants to kind of look inside the usual box, and in fact they often have checklists, and our project checks different boxes that they didn't even know about, and it doesn't check the boxes that they want to get checked. So I think we have to start early in having conversations with potential investors, potential lenders, in this particular case, bond holders, and tell them what we're doing and why. So it doesn't just seem like a random set of things to make their life harder. Instead, it's to make all of our lives better. And I think that we've all the time found through this long process of communication, people who say, "I get it, and I want to be part of it." And in the case right now, we just have a new lender JP Morgan coming into the project, and they said, look, we are a corporation that's dedicated to sustainability, and they have a particular standard, a certification that shows that they're putting their money where their mouth is. This is one of the projects that they want to be able to cite.
Oh, how cool is that?
Yeah, so now we're finding people who want to make those investments and matching them up with the projects that want their investment, and that's exciting, and I hope we'll do more with them.
Yeah, getting a bank like that, that's to you, is that, can we talk about, I ask in here a little bit about benchmarking and what determines like a project's success, but even getting off that project off the ground. So this must have been a success. Did you have to educate that client or that banking institution?
They were on.
They come to you? Do you come to them?
Yeah, I mean, in this particular case, when I'm talking about JP Morgan, we were on public bondholder calls, and they were on. Because they're looking for these kind of projects, and they knew that we needed some investment, and so they reached out to us and said, we want to investigate being your lender, and that's how that happened. Other times we'll reach out to turn over every rock. I mean, it's a hard process. So I think I understand why other companies don't want to do it. It's a lot of work, and so if we didn't believe in it passionately, we just wouldn't do the extra work. It's much easier to not do it. So we reach out to companies. If they say no, we say, do you know anyone who might be interested in this? And we just don't take no for an answer until finally we meet the right people, and that's how it gets done every time. It's always hard, but I'm hoping that some of these relationships might be more durable. The problem is a lot of them are local. And we work nationally, so great. We got this great local relationship, and then we're off to work on a project in Florida or California or something, and they don't work there. And so suddenly, we're having to make all new relationships again, and having to reinvent the wheel. That's just the way it goes.
Yep. If anyone's up for the job, it sounds like you are. But I have to ask. I know again. You mentioned that you can still build affordable housing with sustainability in it, and you say that it doesn't have an impact on construction costs, or it does? I find that hard to believe.
We do it in a way. I think this project that we're doing with Griner, there's a little bit of a premium, but it is not so much that we still can't make 2/3 of our apartments affordable. So I think that's it becomes a difficult cost calculation, and I'll tell you why. Because people are focused on first cost. When people say how much does a project cost, they're only talking about first cost. This is a problem. We need to educate people to look at the total cost of ownership.
Okay, so explain that. First costs
versus total cost of ownership, right? So let's take mechanical systems, for example. So how do we bring fresh air in? How do we heat and cool things in a very efficient way? So obviously, a lot of energy gets used doing that. And we are working with Horwitz. They're probably the best mechanical engineering firm in Minnesota. They've been around for over 100 years. I mean,
I've worked with them before.
You have, right? Yeah, they're amazing. They're amazing. And so we wanted to find a way to be more efficient, and they helped us do the calculations. It turns out that the cheapest system. So this is when people say how much does it cost? It's the first cost. The first dollars to buy this system are the cheapest. However, you have to replace them about every 5 years because they wear out. And you throw them away, and you got to worry about refrigerants and releasing them into the atmosphere and all of these environmental problems. And they leak because you put them into the wall, and they punch a hole through the wall, and they let cold air in the wintertime. So it's a bad system, and yet that's what everybody chooses because it's got the cheapest first cost. But if you look over just say 25 years, all of a sudden a much more efficient system becomes much cheaper. How much cheaper? About 500% cheaper. The better system is actually cheaper if you look at the total cost of ownership.
How do you show that to someone? Or how does that?
It's a tough calculation.
Yeah.
You have to say what's our money worth? Instead of spending it now, how much does it cost to service, maintain? How long is its life? When do we replace it? How much does that cost? And when you look at all of those things, you find out that it costs a lot less money to put in a lot better system. And people will be, their comfort will be greatly enhanced.
Yeah.
If you ever stayed, you probably don't have one of these cheap wall in the wall systems, but you've probably been at many hotels that have them in the wall, and they blow on you, and you wake up with a sore throat, and it's noisy. Yeah, it's just it's not a comfortable system. It's not a very human-centered system. And so the system we're putting in is whisper quiet, and people on the sunny side of the building can have on the air conditioning, and people on the shady side can have on the heat, because this is Minnesota and things are different. And so it's a great system for humans, and it's a great system for the planet. And it costs less money. There's a great example.
That's amazing. And when I spoke with Reese with MSR just a little bit ago, he talked about data-driven design, and I think he couldn't have been the more perfect fit. Like, from what you're describing, I think is stuff that excites him too, is just like getting data and understanding how it's going to work, and then putting together something that can actually be used for a long period of time, or designed a certain way so that people can enjoy it for a long time. He talked a lot about quality.
Yeah, I mean, and they, MSR, they were right there from the beginning, and we sat in a room and we said, look, no, we're not using any rules of thumb here. We're not going to make assumptions. This isn't going to be based on your experience. Don't get me wrong, your experience is valuable, or you wouldn't even be here. But now we're going to only pay attention to data. We're only going to pay attention to calculations. And it took a while, because people are used to doing what they already do, and they're experienced at it, and they're good at it, and it's a little bit extra work to not do that. And so when people come in and say, I think you should use this system, and say, show me the calculations. You know, not in an aggressive way, but in a,
prove to me.
Yeah. And pretty soon the whole table was doing that. Show us the calculations. And great ideas were coming suddenly from people that nobody ever talks to, like the interior designers. This is in the beginning of a building, and we're trying to get how much lighting energy does the building use, trying to get that down, so it's really efficient. And the interior designer says, hey, have you thought about paint? And everybody said, what are you talking about? And they said, well, paint has an intrinsic reflectance factor, and if you choose paint to reflect more light, you can actually lower your light intensity. And it turned out to be like 15% less energy by the paint that we chose. And if we didn't have that big group conversation, and we didn't create the spirit where everybody was jumping in with their good ideas, we wouldn't have done it.
That's awesome. I love that, creating a space that everyone can chip in, give an idea, and feel comfortable doing so.
Yeah.
Any bad ideas come out of it?
Sure. I mean, there's this whole idea about there are no bad ideas, and I'm joking kind of, but because we test things, and then we choose the best thing, which means that we didn't choose 5 things or 50 other things, depending on what we're talking about, all go by the wayside, and we use a scientific way of choosing. It's called choosing by advantages. Okay. And this was invented by the Forest Service, and it's actually a scientific way. And when you talk to the guy, Jim Surr, at the Forest Service, who was responsible for kind of developing this with 2 universities, he says, I used it in my kids. They're like, what kind of jacket do you want to buy? Oh, we're going to sit down and do choosing by advantages. And I kind of drive them crazy, but it's the only way to make choices. And so we will look at all these systems, and so everybody can put them on there. And sometimes it's really obvious before you've even finished the exercise, like, yeah, those are not going to win, Yeah. And they thought, the people who threw them on the table, they thought they were going to win, or based on my experience, this will be the best system. Didn't turn out to be the case. Once we crunched the numbers, once we looked at all of the factors, and that means not just data. Because some things are important, they're aesthetic things. Like, I like the way that looks. I don't like the way that looks. There's no data associated with that. But you can use this process to include subjective and objective information in the same process. And that helps you sort that out.
So I'm curious to know then, as you're finishing up the project, and what number development is this for you? How many have you developed so far?
This will be my 27th major project. Also did some minor projects and little projects, single-family homes, things like that, and they were just as much work as these big projects, so might as well get more impact.
Yeah, good for you, and you're exactly right, they are. So what will deem this project a success? What are the benchmarks, or what will you see or need to know that this project was a success?
Well, I mean, there's a series of them, figuring out how to design a building that uses, a fraction of the energy of the buildings in our neighborhood. And we worked with the University of St. Thomas to help us with this. And I don't know if you've ever done these carbon calculators that tell you what your carbon footprint is. You know, they'll ask you what kind of car do you drive, how many miles, and
I'd be horrified, I think.
yeah,
I'm driving my
most
husband's truck
Americans
right now.
are just, you know, there's a really annoying data piece, which is that an American baby, by the time it is 2, uses more than the average life expectancy of a human in Mozambique their entire life, and they're babies. I mean, how are they using so much stuff?
What is happening?
So it's crazy. So yeah, all of us would be shocked if we did a carbon calculator. But what we try to do is to say, what happens if people are buying food and it's being grown right downstairs and their energy is being generated here and they're getting on the train instead of their car, or they're using live and work to work at home and they don't even have to commute at all these different things that we're doing. Turned out when they did it all, they came up with some number of tons of carbon dioxide, and then the people at the table said, nobody cares about nobody knows what that means. And so they brought in their artists from their art department at the university, and they worked with them to figure out this wonderful, easy to remember, beautiful thing, which is living in this project, this Via Sol project, will be the equivalent of saving 384 trees every month versus living in the apartment building across the street.
But how can, based on, I mean, that's wonderful.
Isn't that
Sounds
amazing?
great, yeah.
Yeah. So that's how much carbon, it's the equivalent of saving that many trees as opposed to chopping them down. Think about it another way. We don't like to ever be critical of somebody, but let's just pick some other building in the neighborhood. That's like cutting down 384 trees every month compared to us.
Is that how you're going to?
No.
Is that how you're going to get people
But I am
to lease it?
super proud of 384 trees. That's
amazing.
every apartment every month, not the whole project.
Oh, every
This is when you move into your apartment, you're going to be
can
saving
feel good about
384 trees every month.
Do you put that in the lease?
Just by living there. Yeah, we've talked about it. We've talked about it. What's going to happen is people walk in, they'll see this big screen, and it's going to say, this is how much energy we're generating from the sun. This is how much energy we're generating from the wind. This is how many pounds of waste we didn't throw into the incinerator. You know, it's going to be compelling.
Oh, cool. I think you'll get a great response from that. And so right now, you're starting tours. Is that right?
Yeah, we're having a tour this week.
Okay.
We had one before. It was jam-packed, and it was really still, sticks, up there. But people wanted to get in there and see. You could at least stand in a room and say, oh, I love this. It's high ceilings, and you could get a sense of that. Now the countertops are in, and appliances are in, and it's painted, and I think they're gonna freak out when they see it. It looks really great. And again, for people, this isn't everybody's cup of tea. Some people aren't thinking about this stuff. And that's okay, but the people who have been thinking about this, they have no idea where to go that would make a difference. They're wondering, what kind of toilet tissue will help the environment should I buy? Here's 1,000 decisions that we made, and all you have to do is move in.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
And so you're talking a lot about marketing. So, as we're discussing this, so that's huge. And
we're not too good at it. I mean, the truth is we're not too good at it. We don't have big marketing budgets. We don't have, glossy brochures and that sort of thing. We just never do.
But they're finding you. It sounds like
and then,
there's a
we do a
need.
lot of these kind of conversations, not necessarily podcast conversations, but just one-on-one. Talk to people, say, here's what we're doing. You might be interested in that. And they tell people. And because, like I said, for the people who are looking for this, there isn't any other place like it.
What could cities or the state, what could cities do to make affordable housing easier to develop?
This is a huge question. I mean, it has been called a national crisis, and this was before the pandemic. And the pandemic, there were some emergency protections that came in to keep people from either having their homes foreclosed on them or being evicted from their apartments. And I think that those are just about to come off. And so this crisis that we had before going in is only going to get worse. And I think it's a shame because so many, if you care about your fellow Americans, then you don't want them to have to make a choice between rent or medicine, or food or rent. This is going on all the time with millions of our fellow Americans, and that's one of the reasons I do what I do. But even if you said, I can't think about that, it's too much, I can't think about it, then do it because it's good for the economy. Because when people's money is going only to rent, then they don't do anything else to stimulate the economy. And for better or for worse, we're an economy that is driven by consumption. And these folks who are millions and millions and millions of people in the economy, they can't do anything except pay their rent. There's no money left to stimulate the economy. And billionaires don't do it. It takes everybody. It takes the bottom of the pyramid to stimulate the economy. So there's been some data to suggest that we're losing hundreds of billions of dollars in economic activity because we don't have enough affordable housing. So if you don't want to do it for the single moms and the low wage earners, then do it because it's really good for the economy.
It'll stimulate the economy, yeah.
And sometimes I find it's good to find, if you haven't noticed, I like to find a handhold for anybody. This stuff works on either side of the political aisle, and I have to be able to find arguments that are compelling for both sides of the political aisle. Otherwise, you can't do what we're trying to do. Yeah, you need everyone.
You do. You really help put it in perspective, easy for people like me to understand. So I appreciate that. So then, if a developer is going to do a project and they're trying to decide if they want to do an affordable housing project or a market rate project, what would you tell them, or how can?
Well, I think that, again, the economy is starting to find affordable housing actually kind of a worthwhile investment from an investment standpoint because its performance has been really carefully underwritten. So when you are using, again, other people's money, there's a lot of microscopes focused on your project, and as a result, it's pretty much bulletproof. So people are finding, all right, so I only make 5%, 6% on my money, whatever. I know I'm going to make that. It is rock solid. Those people are going to need those places to live for the next 100 years, and that's a good investment. It doesn't give me 20 times Silicon Valley kind of return on my investment, but I need something that's stable and is going to work. So I think the economics are starting to kind of come out about affordable housing and people wanting to make investments in it. But I think for developers, there are folks who have managed to kind of verticalize everything to the point where they're their own contractor, they're their own architect, they're their own, and they can do projects and make money. Because they are pulling every job in, and they can charge the maximum fee for each one of those to themselves. And so I think it ends up making a compelling business case that way. So as usual, there's a policy here around affordable housing. It's not giving us, all I can say about it is it's not giving us enough affordable housing. So if you're judging the policy on the basis of, is it solving the problem? It isn't. Yeah. Everybody knows this, so we need something else. That's one of the ways that Via Sol comes in, is because we used a new way of financing affordable housing. It hasn't been done before. And so what we're trying to do is work with our friends at LISC, who are a big national group, to get the word out that this works. We can use this financing tool, and it'll expand the affordable housing pie. We're not taking resources away from anybody else. We're creating new resources to do this. That's important.
Do you think that there's a community, is there a community outside of Minnesota that you think does affordable housing really well that we could emulate?
Well, Via Sol is in St. Louis Park, and they have inclusionary zoning ordinance there that has been working well now for many years. Okay. And there's been a kind of an epic battle going on around the country about inclusionary housing, and right next door in Minneapolis, they still haven't decided to do it. And so I often will point to St. Louis Park and say, here's an example. If you want to build an apartment building in St. Louis Park, you have to make 10% of your apartments affordable. And it's at your cost. That's the cost of doing business in St. Louis Park. There are cities like Portland, Oregon, who say 20%. And I think that's probably getting to be the upper end of what's feasible. Okay. And then there are other ways.
I guess
as well.
Why is that? Why?
Why is that? Because I think that the apartment buildings are not so profitable that you can afford to take 20% of your profit earning units and make them affordable, make them money losers. Somewhere between 10% and 20% is probably the right number. California uses the tax credits that every state uses, and then they do a big bonding issue, and they create more, about double what other states get. On a per capita basis. And so they have been churning out quite a bit of affordable housing lately to try to catch up with their deficit. Wow. But no, I would say everybody's falling behind. Minnesota maybe was behind. I haven't seen the recent statistics, but I think pre-pandemic we were about 40,000 apartments behind.
Oh, wow.
In other words, there were people standing in line for 40,000 apartments. And that number keeps going up every year because each year we fall further and further behind. That's not a good situation.
No, we can definitely do better. One more question for you about the future of your housing development. So will there be more? Will there be a 28th large development, you think? Are you going to keep going?
Yes, we've been talking to your colleague Spencer at Griner about another one. Down in St. Peter, Minnesota, that we're kind of just doing all that hard work up front that we do to try to make sure that it works, is in the process right now. And we have other cities that call us. We probably get a call every week. We love what you're doing. Can you do it here? The answer is usually no, because the ingredients aren't necessarily there. But one of those, all it takes is a few of those calls, and then we're working in different places and creating more communities like this. This particular one, Via Sol, happened that the stars really aligned. We were able to do more here than we often can do. Yeah. That's exciting.
Well, I want to know, so when you say ingredients, what does that mean? Like a big enough spot to do, like a big enough parcel of land, or that you're next to the light rail system, or what is the secret sauce?
So an opportunity for what's called transit-oriented development. Okay. That's what we did here. It's more than just a light rail station, because the bike trail also runs contiguous 1,000 feet along our property with us. You can take that downtown and never get on a city street. That's pretty amazing. That's a viable commuting tool for people. Even in the winter, I see people out there, since we've been working on this project, people with these big kind of snow tires on their bikes, and they're all bundled up and going. So, I mean, Minnesotans, they'll find a way.
Yes, they do.
So that's great. And then there are 4 bus lines right around us. And so that, all together really can reduce the dependence on the car. And then we've got a partnership going with Our Cars, another nonprofit in town. I don't know if you've seen them, but you can kind of rent their car by the hour.
Okay.
And they are putting 2 electric cars that everyone can share on the site and plug them into the solar array to charge them. So they'll be really solar-powered cars. People can just spend, $7 an hour. They don't even need insurance or fuel or anything else, and drive around in an electric car. So I think that's going to be great. When you do need a car, then there's one right there.
That'll be pretty cool. I'm excited to see how this all turns out. So do you want to plug anything else about Via Sol or leasing?
Well, I mean, if people want to learn more, we have a website for it. It's vialiving.org, vialiving.org. And I think they can also find their way back to Place in case they're interested in what is our next big idea going to be, because they're out there, they're coming. And I also would say that there's a tour. If you want to come to the tour on Thursday, that information is up on the website, or just come on out to the site at 4:00, and we'll be taking people through. And that's Thursday. This probably won't air in time, right?
No,
to tell people about it. But there'll be another one, and you'll find it on that website. And there's something here for people kind of across the income spectrum. So we have opportunities for people that are lower wage earning households, and we have people that are really nice places for people who are doing well. And there's something for everybody here.
Yeah, and they just want to do the right thing. Well, thank you for being so passionate about what you do, and for saving our planet and saving some trees. That's
Thanks
really
for
important.
reaching out to us,
Absolutely, you've been a great partner. So Chris, thank you so much for your time, and I think I could see another podcast in our future.
Okay.
I think people need to know more about some of your sustainable efforts and how we can always do more. So
Yeah, there's never enough time to talk about it, as I said. So, and I never get a chance to really talk to people who are interested. So when I do, I have a lot to say.
Yeah,
it's all stored up.
Well, here's a great place for you, a platform.
Absolutely,
for you.
thank you.
Thanks again, Chris.